The desert stretched endless and cruel, like a wounded beast breathing heat. Eli Mercer rode slow, the reins slack, his horse's hooves whispering over cracked earth. The sun glared down like judgment, and every rock, every dead tree seemed to stare back with hollow eyes. He hadn't spoken to another soul in months. Didn't plan to, but the desert has a way of calling things back from silence. Sometimes mercy, sometimes ghosts. When he saw the shape in the sand, he thought it was another mirage. A small body, still as bone. Then a flicker of breath. A girl, skin burned, lips split, her eyes barely open. Eli knelt beside her, water trembling in his canteen. She tried to speak, but only dust came out. "Easy," he murmured, voice rough from disuse. "You hold on now." He lifted her into his arms, light as a bundle of sticks. In the distance, the wind shifted, carrying the sound of a drum that wasn't there. Somewhere, the desert remembered its dead. By the time Eli reached the cabin, night had fallen like a heavy blanket. The girl shivered against him, skin cold as stone. He pushed the door open with his shoulder. One room, one cot, one man's solitude. He laid her near the fire and stripped away her torn moccasins. Her feet were bleeding sand. He didn't ask who she was, didn't want to know, but when he saw the small tattoo on her wrist, a pattern of 4 lines and a circle, something in his memory stirred. A face from long ago, a raid, a scream. He looked away, jaw tight. The fire snapped, spitting sparks like restless spirits. Eli worked through the night, cleaning her wounds, dripping water between her lips. The girl murmured in a language he didn't understand. Outside, coyotes howled in the distance, echoing through the basin like ghosts calling to each other. He kept his revolver within reach, though he wasn't sure why. Maybe habit, maybe fear of what would follow her. When dawn bled across the window, he realized she was still alive, and that the desert had decided to spare her. For now, by noon, she woke screaming. Her eyes wild, pupils wide as moons. Eli grabbed her shoulders, calming her like a spooked horse. She stared around the room, panting. Then, at him. Fear, confusion, hatred. She spoke one word, broken, trembling. Why? He had no answer, only silence. She turned her face from him, tears cutting through dust. The desert outside whispered, as if answering for him. That evening, the wind carried the smell of rain that never came. Eli sat on the porch, rolling tobacco with hands that had forgotten the motion of peace. Inside, the girl slept uneasy, murmuring in dreams. He looked east toward the mesas. In the fading light, he thought he saw movement, shapes like riders on the rim, standing still. The desert gave no sound, no proof. Just silence deep enough to make a man doubt his eyes. Morning broke without warmth. The desert sun rose cold and distant, as if it too kept its distance from what lay in that cabin. Taya sat up slowly, eyes tracing the strange room. The rifle above the door, the faded photographs nailed to the wall. A man's loneliness turned into shelter. Eli poured water into a tin cup and set it by her side. She didn't drink at first, just watched him. The scar on his cheek caught the light. "You ain't gotta be afraid," he said softly. Her voice cracked through the silence. "You killed Paiute before." Eli froze. The question hung between them like a noose in still air. After a long moment, he said, "I've killed a lot of men, girl. Don't mean I aim to." By afternoon, she'd eaten a little and slept again. Eli went outside to chop wood, the sound echoing off distant stone. Each strike of the axe felt heavier, each silence afterward more hollow. He caught himself looking toward the hills more than once, certain he saw movement among the rocks. The desert gives a man visions when he's alone too long, or maybe warnings. When he came back inside, Taya was awake, watching from the window. Her voice was quiet, almost mournful. "They will come." He paused. setting down the axe. "Who?" She didn't answer. At dusk, a shadow crossed the ridge. Eli's horse snorted, restless. He stepped outside, rifle in hand, and scanned the distance. The sky was painted blood orange, the wind dry and sharp. From behind him, Taya spoke in her language. Words carried like wind through reeds. He turned slightly, not understanding, but somehow knowing it was a prayer. Something about the sound made him think of battlefields, of the cries that follow a dying man into sleep. When he looked back to the ridge, the shadow was gone. Later that night, the wind rose, hissing through the chinks of the cabin walls. Eli dozed in a chair, rifle laid across his lap. He dreamed of the war, of faces half lit by fire, of the sound of hooves and screams and smoke. When he woke, the fire was low. Taya sat beside it, humming faintly, staring into the flames. Her eyes reflected light like polished amber. "You dream," she said without looking at him. He nodded. "Every man's got ghosts." She turned her head, whispering, "Not every man lets them live." By the third day, Eli felt the air change. Something unseen had settled over the land. Too still, too quiet. Even the coyotes had gone silent. When he stepped outside, the ground carried faint tracks, narrow, bare, human, fresh. He looked to the horizon where the sand rose like smoke and knew they were no ghosts. Inside the cabin, Taya's voice trembled through the open door. "They found me." Eli's grip tightened around his rifle, and for the first time in years, fear had a name. Eli followed the tracks until they vanished among the rocks. The air was heavy, thick with heat and distance. He crouched low, fingers brushing sand still warm from footsteps. No animal scent, no echo, just the faint feeling of being measured from afar. When he returned, Taya was outside, standing barefoot in the dust. She was tracing lines on the cabin door with ash from the fire. Symbols, circular and deliberate. "What's that for?" Eli asked. Her eyes didn't lift. "To keep the dead out." He looked toward the horizon, the emptiness pressing on every side. "Ain't sure they ever left," he muttered. By midday, the desert turned still as glass. No birds, no wind, no sound but the creak of the porch boards. Eli sat sharpening his knife, listening for something he couldn't name. Taya worked silently, grinding herbs she'd gathered near the creek. The faint scent of sage rose through the air. After a long while, she spoke. "My people say mercy is a circle. What you give comes back." Eli looked up, eyes tired. "Ain't much come back to me but trouble." Taya smiled, faint and sad. "Then maybe trouble is what you gave." That night, Mira rode up the canyon path. Her lantern bobbed like a ghost light through the dusk. Eli met her at the porch, unease in his stance. "You came far this time of night," he said. "I heard talk," Mira replied, dismounting. "Men seen fires on the ridges. Figures moving where no white man rides." Her eyes shifted to the cabin window where Taya watched in silence. Mira lowered her voice. "They say the Paiute are calling back a girl the spirits claimed. That she's dead to them now. And whoever shelters her won't see another sunrise." Eli's jaw tightened. "I reckon I've seen enough sunrises anyhow." After Mira left, darkness felt heavier. Eli sat by the fire, oil lamp burning low. Taya's soft chanting rose behind him, her voice trembling but steady, weaving through the room like smoke. He tried not to listen, but the sound found its way inside him, stirring things he thought long buried. When the last note faded, she looked up. "You carry shame," she said quietly. "It follows you." Eli stared into the fire. "Then maybe it'll burn with me." Before dawn, Eli woke to the horse's alarm. Calico stomped and snorted, eyes rolling white in the dark. Eli grabbed his rifle and stepped outside. The horizon was rimmed with pale fire. First light. But on the ridge above, shapes moved. 3. Then 5. Then more. Silent, still, watching. He raised his gun but didn't aim. They weren't advancing, just waiting. Behind him, Taya whispered from the doorway, voice trembling, "They see her mark. They know." The silence felt alive, thick with the weight of an ancient promise. By sunset, the desert had turned the color of blood. The wind died and the air grew thick with dust that refused to move. Eli stood at the porch rail, watching the horizon. Taya sat behind him on the steps, whispering to the earth, her fingers tracing the dirt like she was writing to ghosts. The first torch appeared far out, one flicker, then another, then a river of light winding through the basin. 300 riders, no sound, no war cry. Just silence deeper than any night he'd known. Eli breathed out, steady, as though the world itself might shatter if he made a sound. When full dark came, the torches ringed the cabin in perfect silence. Eli checked his rifle, loaded shells one by one. His hands were steady, though his heart beat like a drum somewhere deep in his chest. Taya knelt by the hearth, whispering a song he didn't understand. He stared at her, wondering what kind of man he'd become. One who saved a life, or one who doomed them both. Outside, a coyote gave a single cry, sharp as a bell. Then, nothing. The first arrow came silent, splitting the doorpost. Eli flinched, but didn't move from his chair. The next thudded into the wall above Taya's head. "Stay down," he said, voice low and calm. Through the narrow crack in the shutters, he saw them. Faces painted in ash and red, motionless on horseback, eyes glinting in torchlight. One rider dismounted, holding a staff bound in feathers. He planted it in the dirt facing the cabin. Eli lowered his rifle, breath fogging the glass. "That ain't a threat," he murmured. "That's a message." Hours passed without movement. The torches burned low, glowing like coals scattered across the plain. Eli sat at the table, Taya beside him, both staring into the flame between them. Finally, she spoke. "They want me back." "I figured," he said quietly. "If I go, they let you live." He shook his head. "Ain't that simple." Her eyes searched his face, reading the quiet resolve there. "You're not one of us," she said. "No," Eli whispered, gaze distant. "But I ain't one of them anymore, neither." Near midnight, Eli stood and opened the cabin door. Cold air swept in, carrying the dry scent of sage and ash. Taya rose to stop him, but he just smiled, sad, gentle, like a man saying farewell to a dream. He stepped into the open, unarmed, the torchlight trembling against his weathered face. The line of riders parted, slow and soundless. From their center came Chief Noka, eyes glimmering beneath his painted brow. Eli met his gaze. Two men, bound by a single moment neither could undo. The desert waited, silent witness to the space between them. Eli stopped 10 paces from the nearest torch. The wind had died entirely. The desert was a cathedral of silence. Chief Noka sat astride a black horse, eyes cold as obsidian. Neither spoke. Only the fire between them crackled, whispering its small defiance against the night. Taya stood in the cabin doorway, her voice carrying softly on the still air. "He saved me," she called. "He means no harm." The chief didn't look at her. His gaze stayed fixed on Eli, measuring the weight of his soul. Finally, Eli said, "I didn't save her to steal her. I saved her 'cause she's a life, same as any." Noka's answer came like stone breaking. "Then give her back and take your peace in death." The chief dismounted, moving slow, deliberate, his every motion steeped in ritual. From his belt he drew a long knife, its blade polished by years of prayer. Eli didn't flinch. "You mean to kill me? Best get on with it," he said. Noka's eyes narrowed. "A man who saves a spirit marked for death steals the tribe's balance. Blood must speak." Taya ran forward, tears bright on her cheeks. He didn't steal me, he gave me breath. The chief's face softened for an instant, the smallest crack in stone. Then his breath will return to the sand, and yours will remain free. Eli looked at her, voice low and sure. Don't cry for me, girl. Some debts need paying. Norg e. But before the knife fell, the wind returned. Soft, low, almost mournful. It carried with it a sound, faint at first. Drums. Not human hands, but the desert itself drumming through the hollow ground. The horses shifted uneasily. Torches flickered. Taya whispered something in her language. A plea or a prayer. Eli caught only one word. Balance. He turned toward the chief. If she's marked, then maybe I was meant to find her. Maybe your spirits sent me to finish what they couldn't. Noka's grip on the knife trembled. The air grew strange, humming like thunder buried beneath the earth. Noka dropped the knife into the sand. The spirits speak, he said, voice rough with awe. But I do not yet know what they say. Eli nodded once. Maybe they're saying there's been enough blood for one lifetime. The chief looked at him a long while, then to the girl. The circle turns, white man. You cannot stand outside it. Eli stepped closer, unafraid. Ain't trying to. Just hoping to break it. Behind them, the riders began to lower their torches, the silence shifting from fury to mourning. Taya walked to Ellie's side, placing the beaded necklace that had broken days before into his hand. It belonged to my mother, she said. Now it belongs to the man who faced death without anger. He smiled faintly. Don't make me no hero. You're not, she whispered. You're the proof that mercy lives. From the circle, the chief raised his arm, and the riders turned away as one, vanishing into the darkness like smoke carried by the wind. Eli stood alone in the settling dust, holding the necklace tight. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone in the silence. The desert was quiet again. The riders gone. Only the fire's low hiss and the whisper of cooling sand remained. Eli sat cross-legged by the dying embers, the necklace dangling between his fingers. The beads clicked softly, small echoes of the night's mercy. Taya dozed nearby, her face calm for the first time since he'd found her. But peace in the desert never stays. It lingers just long enough for ghosts to draw near. He saw them in the flicker, men he'd killed, faces half-burned by memory. Their eyes accused, not in hatred, but in pity. He whispered to the dark, ain't no forgiveness left to give. Near dawn, Eli dreamed of the war again. Flames rolling across the plains, gunfire lost beneath the roar of wind. But when he looked closer, the faces weren't soldiers. They were Paiute women and children, their eyes wide with terror. And at the center of the burning field stood himself, holding a rifle that never seemed to empty. He tried to scream, but smoke filled his lungs. Through the haze, he saw Taya's face watching him, calm, sad, ancient. When he woke, the desert smelled of fire, though no flame burned. When morning came, Chief Noka returned. Alone. No torches, no riders, only silence between footsteps. Eli watched him approach, but didn't reach for his rifle. You saw the spirits, Noka said. Eli nodded. Reckon they saw me too. The chief's eyes were weary, burdened with centuries. The desert forgives no man, but it remembers every truth. He paused, looking toward Taya. She carries what is left of my people. You carry what's left of yours. Both are ghosts. Eli's reply was soft. Maybe ghosts are what's needed to start over. They built a fire together. Eli, Noka, and Taya, 3 figures around a single flame. The chief placed a handful of red earth into the fire, murmuring words older than the land itself. Eli watched the dirt burn and turned to smoke. What's it mean? He asked. Noka answered, the ground remembers what we take. We give a little back. Taya looked up, eyes shining in the flames dance. Then give back your sorrow, she said quietly. Let it burn. Eli leaned forward, dropped the necklace into the fire, and closed his eyes. As the last ember died, the wind rose and carried the smoke eastward. Chief, Noka bowed his head. It is done, he said. You are free of the circle. Eli stood slowly, gaze fixed on the horizon. Ain't nobody ever free, he murmured. Just forgiven a while. He looked at Taya, who smiled faintly, peace dawning in her eyes. Then he turned toward the desert, the vast open silence waiting like an old friend. Behind him, Noka's voice drifted low. Go, ghost man, let the fire carry you home. The morning rose clean and still. Taya stepped from the cabin, bare feet sinking into cool sand. The fire pit was cold, its ashes scattered by the wind. No trace of Eli. Only his coat folded neatly on the porch, a single rifle cartridge resting on top. She picked it up, turning the brass in her fingers, watching sunlight flash across it like memory. Somewhere far off, a hawk cried and vanished into the sky. The world felt empty but peaceful, as if the desert itself had finally drawn breath again. She found his tracks leading east, already half buried by drifting sand. They stretched toward the mesas where the sun burned low, toward the long road men take when they've got nothing left to lose but peace itself. For a moment, she considered following, but something told her he didn't mean to be followed. Instead, she knelt, pressing a palm to his fading footprints. Thank you, she whispered. The wind answered, lifting her hair across her face like a caress. Later, she climbed to the ridge where the riders had once stood. From there, the world unfolded, valley, sun, and endless silence. She could almost hear them again. The horses, the drums, the prayers carried on wind. But all that remained was stillness. From her satchel, she took a small pouch of ashes, the remnants of the necklace that had burned in the fire, and scattered them into the air. They caught the light and drifted like golden dust toward the horizon. Far away, where the desert meets the mountains, Eli rode alone. His horse moved slow, each step stirring small clouds of dust. He no longer carried his rifle. Only a single flask and the memory of a girl had once pulled from the jaws of death. The world around him seemed endless, but not cruel anymore. Just old, patient, and watching. He looked toward the sunrise and smiled faintly. Guess the circle's wide enough for one more turn, he murmured. By midday, the heat shimmered again, and his figure became a mirage on the far plain. Taya stood at the ridge's edge, hands shading her eyes, watching until he was gone. The wind rose, carrying with it the faint rattle of beads, though none hung around her neck. She smiled, a quiet, knowing thing, and turned back toward the cabin. Behind her, the desert stretched silent and infinite, and somewhere within that silence, mercy lived on.